Hello everyone, I'm Nökkvi.
And I'm Peter.
And
We
are
the
Birds
of
Play. In this video, we're going to be celebrating our favorite Final Fantasy games by ranking our, top 5 favorite Final Fantasy games.
And since this is going to be a list of our favorite games, we're actually going to be walking you through 2 different rankings. Because as you may or may not have noticed, we are 2 different people. And this is a chance to get to know us. Lucky you!
If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to tell us about your top 5 favorite Final Fantasy games down in the comments below, so that we can get to know you better. There are no wrong answers. But without further ado, let us tell you about the games we've taken the most liking to.
Good one! My favorite Final Fantasy game, number 5. Final Fantasy XIV. It's a bit difficult to compare Final Fantasy XIV to most other Final Fantasy games, since it's so drastically different. But we here at the Birds of Play have been playing Final Fantasy XIV on and off again ever since the release of A Realm Reborn, and thrown quite a bit of time into it. I like Final Fantasy XIV for its focus on telling an epic story in the context of an MMORPG. So if you've been sleeping on the game purely for the sake of it being an MMO, be aware that you are missing out on a rich story worthy of the Final Fantasy name. Not to mention, you can play with friends. Oh, and also, you will feel compelled to place it in your own favorite Final Fantasy ranking just to justify all the time you've poured into it. Just remember, play responsibly.
My favorite Final Fantasy game, number 5. Also Final Fantasy XIV. So these rankings are starting out kind of the same, even though you'd think we try to mix things up a bit in favor of making a more interesting video and comparison between the two of us, but we are prioritizing honesty and integrity over entertainment. Please don't leave! But yeah, Final Fantasy XIV gets a spot on my list for its fantastic story and the ability to play with others. But I also want to mention how the game can function as a sort of hub for the Final Fantasy fandom, or a place for Final Fantasy fans to enjoy the franchise in between the release of other Final Fantasy titles. For example, we will probably be waiting for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 and Final Fantasy XVI for quite a while, but while we wait, it's great to know that the world of Final Fantasy XIV will always be there waiting with us. And soon it will take us to the moon! The moon!
My favorite Final Fantasy game, number 4. Final Fantasy VIII. I know that a lot of people don't really care for Final Fantasy VIII. The junction system, for one, takes a while to get used to, and the story could be described as convoluted. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but love it or hate it, the game was a technological milestone when it came out, both in terms of the in-game graphics and the pre-rendered cinematics. Not that graphics are everything, but back in those days, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in video games was something that really left... was something that... Svona hægri sinnaður radio host. Pushing the boundaries of what was possible in video games was something that really left an impression. So the nostalgia factor is really strong with this one. But the music is timeless and some of the best the series has to offer, past and present. Couple that with a little bit of teenage angst and you got a real winner.
My favorite Final Fantasy game, number 4. Final Fantasy VII. I'm guessing that quite a few of you are shocked, maybe even outraged at me for ranking Final Fantasy VII so low. But I don't really consider it low at all since the game is in such prestigious company. Final Fantasy VII was my entry into the Final Fantasy series back in the day, and I remember being amazed by the sheer scope of the game. It felt almost infinitely large and explorable, and I was in awe that something like it existed at all, let alone that someone had constructed it. It was in a way an artistic reaction or an early visceral reaction to art, and it paved the way for my future appreciation of not only future Final Fantasy games, but also works of art in general. So I guess you could say that even though Final Fantasy VII isn't my all-time favorite Final Fantasy game, it's still the game through which all subsequent love and appreciation has been filtered.
You're so pretentious, brother, I hate you. Moving on. My favorite Final Fantasy game, number 3. Final Fantasy VII. So I rank Final Fantasy VII a bit higher than you, but still not at the top. Keep on watching to find out the top spots, or just skip ahead. Please don't skip ahead.
We need those watch hours.
But Final Fantasy VII is of course also a real milestone, just like Final Fantasy VIII when it comes to graphics, and the music is the stuff of legends. But for my part, Final Fantasy VII takes the cake by having a more relatable story about industry versus nature, hidden playable party members that make you feel extra special for unlocking them, and materia is cool. I also always thought that Cloud was really cool, although he doesn't really hold the same appeal now that I'm older. Now, President Shinra is the cool one, a businessman who did nothing wrong.
My favorite Final Fantasy game number 3, Final Fantasy VIII. So just like you ranked Final Fantasy VII above Final Fantasy VIII, I do the opposite, because I am a man of culture. Just kidding, this is just a list of personal favorites. But I wouldn't always have ranked 8 above 7. It actually took me a long time to really appreciate it, since there's so much in the game that you can miss or just have go over your head if you're not paying attention. It's a game that rewards being replayed, not only by letting you play around with the junction system, but also by having so much of the lore and plot stashed away off the beaten path in dialogue boxes with random NPCs and other reference materials in the game. Final Fantasy VIII is an exercise in mastery, both in terms of getting the most out of the junction system and in terms of wrapping your head around the story with all its different pieces spread across the game, making it a game I fall deeper in love with each time I play it.
My favorite Final Fantasy game number 2, Final Fantasy IX. My second favorite Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy IX, because of its magical medieval steampunk fantasy world filled with wonder and adventure, all the while masking a sinister undertone of existential dread, getting us to think about the meaning of life. The game also seems like maybe the most fully fleshed out Final Fantasy game of the PlayStation 1 generation, with great side content such as the Search for Chocobo's Paradise, the Mognet mail delivery system, and the card game Tetramaster. Although Tetramaster could have had a bigger payoff. Just don't make me play Jump Rope.
My favorite Final Fantasy game number 2, Final Fantasy X. There is a case to be made that this is actually my favorite Final Fantasy game. At least you would be forgiven for thinking that after taking a look at the videos we've been making. And truth be told, I play this game a lot more than I do my actual favorite Final Fantasy game. It's always great to revisit the world of Spira, and the fact that it's fully 3D and has voiced dialogue makes it a lot easier to consume and to enjoy. Not that I don't also appreciate the older games. Also, I just want to take this opportunity to mention that Seymour is a great villain. He's a fantastic villain, so there's that.
My favorite Final Fantasy game number 1, Final Fantasy X. The characters, the world, the culture, the music, the voiceover. Yeah, even that scene, you uncultured swine that can't appreciate a good thing. Final Fantasy X is the game that has it all. The pilgrimage gives us a clear goal and takes us around Spira as if we were on a guided tour of an amazing world with a unique aesthetic and culture. From a gameplay perspective, I also really like the sphere grid, and there is so much you can do to power up your weapons, even though some of the minigames needed to do so aren't the best. And having things to kill, even when you're super overpowered, is also a lot of fun. Oh, and Jack looks like the fantasy version of my strangely tanned alcoholic father, so I can use that game to deal with my daddy issues.
Oh yeah, he does look like Dad. My favorite Final Fantasy game number 1, Final Fantasy IX. My favorite Final Fantasy game is Final Fantasy IX, but I actually gave up the first time I played it. The reason was that I had just finished Final Fantasy X and got killed when I went to the bathroom, because I forgot the game wasn't turn-based. I didn't pick the game up again for a while because I had also forgotten to save, so I had to replay it from the beginning all the way to the ice cavern. But when I gave it a real shot again, I found a game brimming with charm and with a life-affirming message that gave the story surprising weight. And it doesn't hurt that it's also Hironobu Sakaguchi's favorite, who incidentally also looks a bit like our dad.
Oh yeah. Thanks for watching. We might have shown our age a bit with these titles, but it's called the Golden Age of Final Fantasy for a reason.
Also, sorry for very similar lists, but we're brothers, so what did you expect? Honorable mentions to Final Fantasy XIII, and Final Fantasy VI, and Final Fantasy IV, and Final Fantasy 15, and Final Fantasy 5, and Final Fantasy 1 through 3, and Final Fantasy 11, maybe. I haven't really played it.
No one's gonna see this because they've all clicked away. Before you click away, don't forget to leave your top 5 favorite Final Fantasy games down in the comments below. But until next time, we leave you with some bird sounds. Caw-caw!